Hi, Shelly here. Last week I had so much fun collaging and making those masterboards, and it inspired me to do this week's project. So I'm starting out by picking out my papers. You can see the color theme that I'm going for in my background. I'm starting out with some green tissue paper on the bottom of my collage. I haven't done that before, and I thought it might be fun to see how that goes. And I crinkled it up so I have a lot of nice texture and wrinkles and made it a little bit short there, but I'm pretty sure that you're not going to be able to tell. So I'm just making it work down there at the bottom. With my canvas drying, I'm going to start working on my flowers. I cut out a bunch of my petunia flowers from my Petunias and Ferns project a long time ago, and I just created a few different sizes of those, cut them out on my Scan and Cut. I want a good mix of these two colors, so I thought it might be fun to use some plastic wrap on top of the paper to see what effect that gives me. And I really like how it turned out. Plus it was fun to do, which is always a bonus. Now here's where I made my mistake. On my first sheet of flowers, I peeled them too soon. They were not dry. They weren't sopping wet, but they were not dry. And so that wound up peeling off a lot of the top layer, as you can see here. This is why I often overdo and make way too many of this kind of thing, because I want to make sure if disaster strikes, it's not the end of the world. So I'm just touching up a couple of spots on the ones that had a little bit of a problem, but they were still in pretty good shape. My second sheet, I waited a little bit longer and they did better, but my third sheet I let sit overnight and they were the best by far. So I have learned a good lesson. I need to peel plastic wrap off right away on cardstock, or let it sit till it's completely dry. Now I wish I'd gone and painted all the backs of my flowers before I did this next step, but sometimes this is the way it goes with me. I kind of go along and have ideas and regret things later. I don't know if that ever happens with you, but it occasionally happens with me. I put a coat of matte medium on the back and then also on the front before I put my tissue paper down. With each layer of paint and matte medium, my flowers get a little more stiff and stronger, and then they will last for many years to come. I created this tissue paper by stamping and stenciling on it years ago, and I still enjoy finding uses for it. While my flowers are drying, I'm going to start working on my butterflies. I'm going through and picking out some colorful papers, and at first I think I'm going to do one butterfly out of one piece of paper, one color of paper. But then I decided it would be fun to get some coordinating papers and put half of the butterfly in each of the papers, so that's what I wind up doing. I'm using one of the butterflies off of my butterfly masks that's in my shop, and I just took the one I wanted and resized it 3 times to to make a small, medium, and large. I think I've got a good mix here ready to go, but as you'll see up ahead, I will spend more time on these butterflies to get it right. Back to my canvas now, which by the way is a 16 by 20 inch hardboard. I'm mixing up some paints, and I'm not exactly sure what I'm going for here, but I'll know it when I see it. I just keep adding and mixing until it looks right to me. And then I'll put some of my color out here and there where I think it needs it, and then smush it around with my fingers. My favorite way to paint. Going back into my papers and making another run at my butterflies. Last night as I was lying in bed thinking about my project, I was thinking about a gal I had seen put some texture paste on tissue paper, and I thought that would be awesome on this project. Took some of my texture paste and took that leftover paint that I had, mixed it up in 2 cups in 2 different colors, and I'm gonna just put it on some plain old Walmart tissue paper and see what I get. I went in fast and heavy to begin with, and you'll see that I got a lot of smushing underneath the stencil. Not a great look, but I'll be able to find something to use these for. But on the next ones I will go a little bit lighter hand and slow down a little bit and get a better result. I'm not cleaning my stencils in between, but I am putting them between paper towels off to my left and smushing them pretty good. It's not a perfect process. You do get a little transfer here and there, but I'm okay with that. I've used a dauber to stencil on texture paste in the past, and it's gone great. So I decided to try it here on the tissue paper. But the texture paste grabs onto the tissue paper and the stencil and pulls it up. It is not, it was not a great idea. But I finish off this one with the dauber and then I'm done with it. Now at this point, I don't know how much of these I'm going to use or if I'm going to use any of them. But I'm determined to use all of my texture paste up here and have some more things to put in my stash. This vine stencil is from my Hog Haven project years ago, and as I'm starting in on it, I decide, yep, this is the one I want to use. So I'm going to finish up all my texture paste, both colors, mostly with these vines. Now that I've got a better idea of the colors I'm going to be using in my butterflies and flowers, I'm going to go back in here and there on my canvas and put a little bit of this gold and alizarin crimson. Once these areas are dry, I go in and start tearing out my tissue paper and figuring out where I want to put my texture paste vines. I thought about using water and a fine liner to go around and cut these out, but a lot of times I like to actually rip the paper with my fingers. I like to feel the paper. Now, because I want to make sure that my tissue paper goes completely translucent, I'm putting a good bit of matte medium on my canvas, and then I'm spraying the backs of the tissue paper with water. This seems to have made a difference in the past, although you're going to see that I still have problems today, and then how I solve those problems. I'm trying to be careful with wet tissue paper. You know, it's very delicate, but it was doable. I didn't record it, but I quickly went through and painted the backs of all my flowers very quickly. And now I'm going to go around and remove all the edges. I'm trying some different methods here, but in the end I wind up just tearing the tissue paper with my fingernails and then using this small little pair of scissors to go around and clean them up. I pull out a little acrylic marker and I'm going to go around all my edges really quick to make sure that I've got a nice edge on my flowers. For the centers of my flowers, I'm just taking a sharp tool that I've got there and making a hole in the center-ish. And I'm going to use these little stamens that I got off of Amazon. You get like 100 of them for, I don't know, a couple of bucks. I'm using 4 for my large flowers and 4 for my next size down, and then I think 2 for my smallest flowers. I wanted to make sure I had enough for all my flowers. Then I'm just taking a little bit of hot glue on the end and then twisting them around so that I can feed them through that hole in my flower, and then I fold them over the back of the flower and then hot glue that down. I've been using this method to make flowers, paper flowers, for many years, and they have just lasted beautifully. And I'm using my little precision hot glue gun here to not only use smaller amounts of glue, but the glue is not as hot as my big glue gun. I am super bummed out that my tissue paper did not go transparent, but now I've got to set out to figure out how I'm going to save this canvas. So I'm mixing up a little paint here. At first I think I'm going to go in all light, but then realize, no, I better do a darker tone first. So you'll see what I do, what I come up with. This was a super long process, but you know, I enjoy this. I enjoy painting. So for me, enjoy the process, but I'm going to speed it up for you because this would be incredibly boring for the hour I spent working on it, or longer. Now I'll come in with a little bit of teal to blend things out a little more. And I'm finally starting to fall in love with it again. I want to highlight my texture now, so I'm mixing up a little darker blue, and I'm going to go in with my fingers and just kind of lightly put it on all over those little vines so that we can see them and have a little more contrast. Going back to my flowers, I'm shaping them. If you try this method, you will be surprised at how firm and strong these flowers are. You could still tear them if you're too rough with them, but they're pretty strong. So you can see I'm really bending them and molding them to a shape that I want them to be. And they will hold this shape for years to come. I got out a little metallic gold, and there's just a couple of my stamens that there was a little bit too much white for me, so I'm touching them up just a little bit. And for those of you that are wondering, I just use a feather duster on my pieces of art where I have a lot of texture or raised elements. It works great. And I have 2 dogs and 2 cats, so it's not a sterilized environment at all. Now, I don't know if it's necessary to use more than one kind of glue, but I don't know why. I always feel safer when I use more than one type of glue. So I'm using my Beacon Fast Grab glue and my high heat hot glue gun. I'm kind of facing my flowers out to one side or the other and filling in with the smaller and medium flowers. I want to make sure that none of my hot glue or none of my glue shows, no matter what angle you look at it from. For my butterflies, I'll put down my bottoms first and then put the tops just over the top so that I have a nice clean edge. And then I put a nice little coat of matte medium all over to make sure that my texture is all the same. When dry, I try a couple of different options for edging my butterflies, but ultimately chose my Stabilo All. I kind of like that rougher look, a little more artistic look than putting the thin fine line around them. Well, that's my project. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, I'd love it if you just leave me a comment, like and subscribe, and I hope you'll join me in my next video. Bye for now.